Greetings, this is Eric. I'm going to go over an analysis of the LPs on AMMs, which are automated market makers on the blockchain. The signature one is the Uniswap pool that's on Ethereum. So let me just dive into it and show you why I think they're all losing money and how I measure that. So first, just a little brief on AMMs. You have a pool. So Alice puts in 1,000 ETH. Current price is 2,500 bucks, so she puts in 2.5 million USD, and then Bob comes in and he takes one ETH out and gives her 25 grand. So that's the price he pays. So what happens? Well, the pool now has one fewer ETH and it has 25,000 more USD. So the price changed because the price is the ratio of the two tokens in the pool. And so in this case, the price went up by 1.1%. And presumably, Bob might be trading just because he wants ETH, but Bob might be an arbitrageur, and he noticed that the price of ETH is above 2,500, and that's why he bought it. And in that case, he would be adversely selecting Eve, who is passive. She's a liquidity provider. And this happens in AMMs, and it also happens in centralized limit order books. It's not as clean, but the same thing happens to any market maker. Now, if Eve had 10 times as much volume in the pool, the price impact would be smaller. So, then, could trade more. But obviously, if Bob was a arbitrageur, he would just, 10x his trade amount to pick off Eve. So that's the problem we're dealing with. That's how the basic mechanics of these pools work. Now, if you look at the basic, you know, you can actually formalize this in the Uniswap AMM, which is called a constant product AMM. And you see that there's a difference between, if Eve comes in at 2,500 and she puts in, 20 ETH and a comparable amount of USD in the pool, and you look at the value of her initial deposit relative to the value of her pool amounts, you'll see that the value of the her pool amount is going to be less than her initial deposit amount. And that's the adverse selection. It's got this shape like this. It looks like a short straddle. And now these are the units for the short straddle, or the loss, the impermanent loss here for Eve. And you can see that this is like two orders of magnitude lower than the value. And the difference between, her pool position and her initial deposit amounts is, you can't even see it on this line. So you might think it's insignificant, but I'm going to show you it's not. It's very significant. And the fact that this looks like a straddle is no accident. I mean, you can actually model this. I did this here where if you take a pool and you can say how much liquidity is in there and you generate this P&L and it looks like a straddle, well, you can replicate that with the straddle and just use solver and solve for some parameters like I used here, notional and the volume. And you can fit it to the P&L numbers here. These orange bars and blue bars are the two things. This is the LP range, and this is option. And you can say, okay, this is just like a straddle. And that's nice because we know a lot about options because we've been studying that for 50 years and have a lot of data on how to analyze them. And so that's one way we can analyze these guys. But let's get into the how much money these guys lose. All right, so I looked at 5 different pools, 4 from Uniswap, and they have 2 on the main net Ethereum. The flagship one is the ETH USD pool. It's 5 basis points. As when you trade with them, you give them 5 basis points of what goes in. They take off the top. They also have an identical one that's 6 times more expensive, 30 basis points. They have one on Avalanche, a new one, and it's basically doing no volume at all. Trader Joe is on Avalanche. It's slightly different than Uniswap, but not significantly. It's more just cosmetic, but that's the best place to trade AVAX against USD. And then Uniswap moved to Arbitrum, which is 10x lower fees, 10 times faster, and that's still much smaller than the one on the main net. And the bottom line is they're losing a lot of money. They lose a lot of money, about 1 to 8 basis points per dollar into these pools. And so for a big pool like Uniswap, that's 55 grand a day. So for a smaller pool like Trader Joe, it's 10 grand a day. But again, it's 1 to 8 basis points. And this is like over the history of these pools. if you look at it in January, it's the same thing. It's 2 to 11 basis points, but for Uniswap, it's more like 2 to 4. So they're getting killed, and it's interesting that they're losing like 1 basis point, whether it's the 5 basis point or 30 basis point pool, which is curious. So let's go into how we measure these things and where I'm getting these numbers. The basic idea. Well, let me go to this